Kakadosh Boker Or, Daf Yomi Masechet Shevuot Daf Amud Aleph 11a1. We were talking about right now the Ketoret, and we wanted to bring a re'ayah that you're able to redeem the Ketoret. So we went and we answered the Ketoret. You cannot come and bring a proof. Why? Kedushat Damim. It's not Kedushat Guf. We said an animal which is going to be brought as a korban is Kedushat Guf. It's on the body of the animal, but it's not just on the money. Here, it's Kedushat Damim. Ketoret is on the money. It's not on the actual body. So we asked the question then, Ela me'ata lo tipasel tvul yom. So according to that, if you're going to tell me that there's no Kedushat, that means only is Kedushat Damim by Ketoret, if a tvul yom is going to touch it, right, it should not be tipasel, right? We didn't find that the Magava tvul yom is going to be posel, something which is the kadosh b'kedushat damim. So lama tanya. So why do we learn, right? Nitna b'machteshet nivselet b'tvul yom. That if you place it in a machteshet, it is going to be pasul b'tvul yom. Remember, tvul yom means that they went to the mikveh that day, but they still didn't bring whether it's going to be the korban, right, or anything else. Thank you, doctor. Yeah. So basically, that's the question. You want to close the door, please? Thank you. Yeah, which means that the question that we ask ourselves is that when you have a case of tvul yom, remember tvul yom is that they go to the mikveh, but it still didn't get to the nighttime. So therefore, they have to wait until the nighttime. And then there's something which is also mechusar kippurim, which means that they're lacking the korban. Sometimes they have to bring a korban. It's not only just some tvilah. So that's called mechusar kippurim. But if not, tvul yom is they went to the mikveh, but they have to wait until nighttime. Uva shemesh v'taher. When it comes to nighttime, that's when they're going to become tahor. So it says here, Ela me'ata lo tipasel tvul yom. So the tvul yom should not become, right, pasul. So why is it that we said that if you place a ketoret inside of a machteshet, it's going to be nifsal b'tvul yom? It's going to be become pasul. So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me kol kedushat damim mipasle, any type of kedushat damim is going to become pasul, right? So he says b'tvul yom. But now we learned in a Mishnah, Hamnachot moalim bahem yishigdushu. The menachot are going to become. Here we're talking about a korban mincha v'yachid, not of the tzibur. So he said once the baalim came and they were magdishotam, so they're going to be chayav mishum milah, okay, which means that they're going to be chayav. Remember, milah means if you're going to benefit from kochim, that's called milah. You're benefiting from something which is consecrated, okay. So he says katshu bekli. The second that you sanctified it with the keli, when we're talking about one of the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash, huchshiru, it becomes fitting, right? Lipasel betvul yom, to become pasul in tvul yom, uvemechusar kippurim, uvelina, and also lina, kachu bekli'in, lo kachu bekli lo. So he said it's only if it was mikadesh in a kli, but if it was not mikadesh in a kli, no. So says the Gemara, elamai, what are you going to say? Kedushat hagufi, it's kedushat haguf. Elameata, so now you're going to say, tipasel belina, it should be pasul, right? In the fact that it stayed the night there. So lama tnan. So why do we learn in the Mishnah? Hakometz v'alevona v'aketoret u'minchat kohanim u'minchat kohen Mashiach u'minchat nesachim moalim b'hem. That whether it's going to be the kometz, the levona, the ketoret, minchat kohanim, minchat kohen Mashiach, minchat nesachim. Why do we have milah and all these things, right? If you're going to say mishuk tushu, the second it became kadosh, right? V'katshu b'kli u'chshiru. Lipasel betvul yom mechusar kippurim ulina katshu b'kli'in lo katshu b'kli lo, which means that you see from here, right, that the ketoret, right, the second that it's going to become pasul belina, the second that you put it inside of this keli to right to lakdishota. Now he says, but why? If you're going to tell me now that it's only kedushat tamim and it's not kedushat aguf, it should not become pasul. So Elmaleh comes and he answers, lina kamarta. Are you going to come and tell me now that we're talking about that if it's going to stay over? He says the ketoret is different from all the other korbanot because it does not change the entire year. So therefore, I would say that it would never become pasul belina, even if it does have kedushat aguf. Meaning like this. One more time. At the beginning of the daf, we came and we answered that it does not have kedushat aguf, the ketoret, only kedushat damim. And therefore, since there's a difference between kedushat aguf and kedushat damim, you can't compare the ketoret to a regular korban. Then we came and we said, what is it? Only kedushat damim? What about here by tvul yom? So the Gemara is going to say, has nothing to do with it. Even if you're going to tell me that the ketoret is kiddushat aguf and not kiddushat damim, kiddushat aguf of the ketoret is much more different than anything else because it's got the lina is always the same. Meaning that when you have an animal that's left over, you can usually tell, right? You could tell it's not that tari, it's not the same thing anymore, right? Anything which is not the same, it's not the same. He says here it's something completely different. Why is it completely different? Here it's different because here you have what's called, right, the ketoret, that by lina, there's no difference. You come, you see it, every single day it looks the same. It's spices. Have you ever come and you all of a sudden the spices they look the same the entire time. It doesn't look like it goes off. So because of that, even if it was going to be kiddushat aguf, still, right, surata is b'choloshana kula, and therefore it's not going to become pasul belina whatsoever. So says the Gemara, mikom makom kashya. We have a question, no? You remember we asked this yesterday. Where did the kiddusha go? You remember we kept on saying, okay, fine, you're going to redeem it. You're going to do like a whole trick and this and that, right? You're checking up the trick again. Yeah. So he says, and all of a sudden, after doing all these things, right, you come and you say, but where did the kiddusha go? So Amar Rabba says, Lev betin matne alehem. Yeah, the lev betin is going to make, right, a tnai on it. What does that mean? Im utzrechu, utzrechu. V'im lav, yulid mehen. He says only if they need the ketoret, they're going to need it. But if they don't need it, so then be'emet, it's only for their money. And therefore you could come, you could redeem it, and you could do whatever you want with the money. Because it's only kiddushat damim. So for the lev betin made a tnai, a condition at the beginning, that it's only if we needed it, we're going to use it. If we don't need it, there's nothing there. So Elmaleh Abaye says, but you were the one that came in and said, imigdish zachar, right? What happens if a person comes and he's magdish an ayil, a ram, right? That's the zachar. Tamim lidamav. Yeah, so he comes and he says, for the money. What does that mean? That he said that the money is going to be kadosh for an olah, that this should be sold and you're going to buy an olah. Kadosh kedushat aguf. It becomes kadosh kedushat aguf, and therefore you're not allowed to sell it. This itself becomes kadosh. I cannot just sell it and then come take the money and use it for something else. The actual goof. So he says, Lakasha, it's not a question. Had amar lidme ola, vehad amar lidme nesachim. The Magdish, it all depends. If he said that the aisle is kadosh to bring the money to the nola, so since the money is kadosh, right, to this korban, so therefore you cannot sell it, right? It itself becomes kadosh, right, which means the actual thing becomes kadosh. The actual animal becomes kadosh. So he says, however, though, if you came and you said it, that it's only going to be the domain nisachim, which means when you came and you were magdish this ayin tamim, it's only going to be for the damim of the nisachim. Remember, nisachim are the wine libations. Yeah, so he says in such a case, it's not going to be kedushat aguf because you can't bring it obviously to the nisachim. So the klal is that now, right, it becomes the kadesh begufo, right? However, though he comes and he says, right, it's not going to be only in such a scenario where the ayil is ugdash for the olah. Okay, fine. 8 Abaye. Abaye comes and he asks the following question now. Par v'sayid shel Yom Kippurim she'avdu. Imagine you have the par and the seed of Yom Kippurim, but they got lost. Now, obviously, got lost before they did the shechita. V'ifrish achrim tachtem. Now, what did he do? He came and he brought another one. Right? They got lost. So what do? You bring another korbanot. So you brought 2 other animals, right? And then, right, Yudalef Amubet, 11b, or the seed for, right, a chatat for the entire tzibur of Avodah Zarah, she'avdu, got lost. You come and you brought another one. Kulan, right, all the animals, right, that were lost, right, if afterwards you found them, yamutu, they have to die, right? Just like a chatat, right, that you remember we said that there were certain times where a chatat, if they would, sometimes the chatat has to die. When is that? For example, let's say the baalim died, the owners died, or if they had a kapara with another chatat, right? So that's the same thing. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon omrim. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say, Yir'u ad she'yistavu, you let them graze until they get a blemish, timachru, and then you sell them. And then the money goes for korban nedava. Remember, right now as it is, a chatat cannot be a nedavah. A chatat is a sin offering. You don't bring presents of sins. Right? I sinned, so I'm going to bring a present to Hashem. It doesn't work. Chatat is only an atonement. So here, the fact that the way that it is, but I can't use it. Either the owners died, or they already had their atonement with another animal. So what are you going to do with this animal now? So what you do is you let it graze, right? The first shita was you let it die, and then that's it. Second one is let it graze. It's going to get a blemish. Once it gets a blemish, now you're allowed to redeem it. And now that you redeem it, the money goes to a korban nedava, which the korban nedava could come for all the olot and everything. So he says she'en chatat tzibur meta. He says v'zalachal Moshe misinai is to do the chatat, right, of the metot. It was only by a chatat yechid, not chatat tzibur. Here it was a chatat tzibur because this was the one of Yom Kippurim or the one of Avodah Zarah, the entire thing. So therefore he comes and he says, you don't just let it die, right? You don't let it die in such a scenario. You let it graze, it gets a blemish, you redeem it, and then the money goes, right, for a korban nedava. So says the Gemara, Vamai. Why is it that we say that there's no chatat tzibur shemeta? He says, Lema, why don't we just say lev betin matnin on him? The lev betin is going to come and make a condition on it. So answers the Gemara, avudin kamarta? Are you going to tell me now that we're talking about avudin that got lost? Shane avudin de lo shchiche. Says avudin is a completely different world because it's not common. Meaning like this: whenever something was not common, betin don't make any conditions. Betin, it's like a gezerah. Things which are betin will only do certain things when it's common. If it's not common, betin will never do anything. Okay, so therefore that's why he says it's completely different halacha. Okay, so now he comes and he says as follows. Yeah, he says hare para. What about now para? He says when you come and you say a para, right? He says de lo shchicha. It's not shchiach, right? Because every single time that you have, whether it's going to be bait rishon, bait sheni, they only did sheva parot. They only did 8 parot. Yeah. So he comes and he says like this. He says, Betanya, and we learned in a braita, paraduma. We're talking about, this is talking about the paraduma. Paraduma, think about it. The entire bait rishon and bait sheni, there was only 7 para adumas. That's 830 years. In 830 years, there was only 7 para adumas. Remember, para adumas is not common at all. It's very not common, right? Nothing. They said that they found 1. Yeah, they said that they found 1. 10 of them, never heard. But very difficult to have a paraduma. Yeah, you have very difficult to have paraduma. Yeah, the second that you work it once, kaddish. The second that you work it once, that's it. It's not a paraduma. Yeah, shalom ashcha be'ol. Nothing. No all, no nothing. So imagine he says like this: para is not shchiach. Paraduma is not common. The Tanya we learned in the Braita. Para nifdet al kol psul shiraba. The paraduma can be redeemed on any psul. Vimeta, and if it died, tipade, you're going to redeem it. Nishchata, if it was going to be slaughtered, not by the harazetim, obviously, tipade, you're going to redeem it. Matzach acher naem, and if you found a nicer one, tipade. Shechata al gabe manachta, en la p'tuya lumit. He says, but if you're going to do it, the shchita by harazetim, but that's where they do the shchita. He says, in such a case, there's no pidyon olamit. Because once you did the avodah, and the avodah was done properly, that's it. There's nothing more to talk about. So he comes and he says now, right? But one second. Here, you have paraduma. Paraduma is not common. How do you redeem it? The only way to redeem it is to say that the lev bedin is matneh, meaning that the bedin are going to make a condition on the kedusha of the paraduma, but it's not common. You just told me that anything which is not common, the bedin did not make a decree. Here, I just brought you paraduma. Paraduma is not common. Yeah, 7 times in 830 years. Is that common? It's not that common. Yeah. Here they said it. They said anytime you would just redeem it. In these cases, whether it was they got a psul, whether it was you found another one which was nicer, whether it was a shechita done on the right, not on harazetim, all those cases you do redemption. How do you do redemption? So answers the Gemara, Shane para the koche bedeka baitu. He says like this. He says para aduma is different than any other korbanot. You know why? He says it's not kedushat hamizbeach. It's bedek habayit. It never went to the mizbeach. The para aduma never went to the mizbeach. The para aduma was always in Har HaZitim. They did the shchita, and then they come and they have it. It never went to the mizbeach. So it's not considered kodshe hamizbeach. It's considered kodshe bedek habayit, right? And therefore, even without tnai, you could redeem kodshe bedek habayit without any problem. So the fact that you could redeem para aduma, right? It is kadosh, but it's kodshe bedek habayit. There's a difference, right? So therefore, the fact that you could be podeh a para aduma, right? That's not a proof that you could come and you can live betin matneh, not matneh. Nothing to do with it. You could always even without tonight, even with lev betin matneh means that the betin are going to come. They're going to make a condition on the sanctity of the product. He says we don't need that. The reason why we don't need that is because really be'emet, even without that, there's no problem. Even without that, yeah. Why? You don't need it. It's kodshe bedek habayit. Kodshe bedek habayit you could always redeem. It's not kodshe mizbeach. So ihachi ifzo meta unishcheta tipade habayinan hamada v'aracha. He says 1 second. What did you just say? You said if the para aduma died, or they did the shchita outside of the proper place, tipade, you're going to redeem it. He says habayinan hamada v'aracha. He says the din is that in order to redeem something which has right any type of a kiddusha, you have to do a hamada v'aracha, which means you have to put it in front of a betin. And the betin are going to evaluate it. So he says, once they do the shchita, or once it dies, it can't stand on its feet. So how do you redeem it? How do you evaluate it? Again, ha'amada, yalamidota, to put it in amida. And then ha'aracha. How does that work? It's dead. It can't get back on its feet. So how do you do amada v'aracha? That's the question. So answers the Gemara. Hamani, who is this? Rabbi Shimon. It's Rabbi Shimon. The Amar that Rabbi Shimon says, Kodshe Mizbeach hayu bichlal ha'amida v'aracha. You're right. Kodshe Mizbeach was part of ha'amida v'aracha, right? Kodshe bedek habayit was never part of ha'amida v'aracha. Meaning that again, since the para aduma is Kodshe bedek habayit, so therefore once it's going to be Kodshe bedek habayit, so then what? You don't need ha'amida v'aracha. Ha'amida v'aracha is only by Kodshe Mizbeach, not by Kodshe bedek habayit, and therefore para aduma is Kodshe bedek habayit. You don't need hamada v'aracha. Okay? Okay. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon, if you're going to tell me now that it's going to be Rabbi Shimon, Ema Seifa. Let's see the Seifa. Shechatal gabe marachta, en la pedia olamit. You remember we just said that if you did do the korban properly, meaning the paraduma was shechted, where? In Har HaZitim, which that's where it's supposed to be. So then that's it. You cannot redeem it. So he says, Vatani, we learned in a bright. Shimon says, Para metamea tumat ochel. The basar of the paraduma, right, is going to be considered ochel. What does that mean? To do a tumah, which means that even though it's not called ochel to do a tumah, but it's something which is mutar basically to give it to the goy. And the basar of the para, you're not allowed to give it to the goy, but it's surbana. So next, but what is it considered? Basara para. Hoy vayala shata kosher. Since it had a time where at the beginning it was going to be right kasher. What does it mean kasher? That you could have eaten it. Amar Shakish, and says Shakish, Omer ya Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon used to say, Para niftet al gabe marachta. That you can do it. You could redeem it even afterwards, which means even after the shechita and everything that was done properly, you could still redeem it. You told me that you could always redeem the paraduma. We asked, how do you redeem it? It's called kedushat haguf. We answered, it's not kodshe mizbeach kodshe bedek habayit. Then we said, okay, fine, it's kodshe bedek habayit. Hamada v'aracha. No, you're like a Shimon. You don't need hamada v'aracha. Hamada v'aracha is only going to be on kodshe hamizbeach, not kodshe bedek habayit. And now we're saying 1 second. So then why is it that after you already brought it properly, you can't do pidyon? The Shaki says you could do pidyon. So he says, Ela but rather shane para is different. Hol v'damei yekarim. Right? He says what happens is that since the para duma is very expensive, the para duma was a fortune always, right? So what happens? So therefore, real estate. Yeah, but it was very expensive. Since it was very, very expensive, so therefore, even on something which is not common, they should have made a condition. So that really be'emet lev betin matneh. So if lev betin matneh, they should make a condition. So therefore, 1 second. But we said that they don't make a condition because it's not common. Just like, so he said what? It's not common, right? The chatat and all those things that shemeta or all those, it's not common. So then we brought a proof. Paraduma is not common. So then we started answering, no, but the paraduma is going to be kocher bedekabayit. It's not kocher mizbeach. It's this, that. Answers the Gemara. Even if paraduma was not common, it's expensive. Anything which is expensive, the betin should have made a condition because it's chashuv, something very, very important. Once it's important, betin are going to come and they're going to make a different condition. You have to give Gemara. Yeah. של זהב. זה הרבה? לא משנה, אבל אתה יודע מה זה 600 קילו של זהב?
100, 200, 300 אלף.
אוקיי. Yeah. So Amar More says, Tipade, Meta. We're talking about right now if the para dies before the shchita, Tipade. So he says, V'chipodin et kochim lachilan laklavim. Says, I don't understand you. When was the last time you saw that you're going to be podeh, kochim, to give it to the dogs? What's going on over here? Right? At the end of the day, a Yisrael cannot eat this. Right? And any type of be'evat kochim shenitnavla, you're not going to be podeh otam. Right? So he comes and he says, therefore, in such a case, you're going to redeem it to give it to the dogs? Remember, what do you do with a nevela? A nevela, you throw it to the dogs. So he says, so therefore, right? What's the purpose of redeeming it if afterwards, anyways, right? It's only going to go right to the dogs. So Amar of Masechet comes and he says, you're allowed to redeem it because of its or, because of the skins, which means you're allowed to redeem the para because of the skins, not because of giving the meat to the dogs. For sure, you're not allowed to redeem it. Kami betin, so says the Gemara, are you going to come and tell me that betin are going to come umatne adaita dora, that they're going to make a tnai just because of the or? So Amar Rav Kahana comes and he says, Amre inshe, people used to say migam la una, which means from a gamal, right? Even its ozen is kedai. Even the ear of a gamal, it's kedai the entire animal because of the ear. Everything is going to be kedai. Fine. 8v. Mudalef towards the bottom. 8v. So the Gemara is going to ask the following question. Amrulo, right? Le Rabbi Shimon. They said to Rabbi Shimon. So this Chachamim coming and they're going and telling Rabbi Shimon. Again, we were going back on the concept of Lev Betin Matneh on Korbanot HaTzibur. So he says, can you have a seed musaf of different times brought on different times? Which means, let's say you have the seed regalim. You can bring it on Rosh Chodesh. What about a seed Rosh Chodesh? You can bring it on seed regalim. Yeah, you can bring it on Shalosh regalim. That's a question. So he says, Amar lehu, he told them, Yikrevu, bring it, no problem. Amru lo, they told him, Hoil ben kaparatan shaveh hechen krevin. So they went and they told Rabbi Shimon, I don't understand you. If right now their kapara is different, how do you bring them on each other? Meaning, how could I bring, remember, the seed of Rosh Chodesh got lost. Now I had a seed of Pesach or Sukkot. How can I now bring it on Rosh Chodesh? Or the other way around? He says, because if it's not the same kapara, how do you bring it? So Elmaleh, and he told them, no, it's the same name. Kulan ba'in lechaper al tuma migdash v'kadashav. It's the same Shem. The Shem is the same. It's true, each one was for different. One is bli yediah b'tchala, bli yediah b'sof, bli yediah b'shtem. But it's the same concept. The concept is tumat mikdash v'kadashav. It's coming to be atoning for tumat mikdash v'kadashav. So says the Gemara Vamai, why? Meaning, why do you have to come and say such an answer? Why don't you just say lev betin matneh alehem? Just say lev betin matneh. That's it. There's not that means if they're going to be brought, it's going to be brought. If it's not going to be brought, come on, no, there's no kiddusha, and then there's no problem. Just the lev betin come, and they can make a condition on this animal. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon kamarta. You're going in shitat Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon does not hold of this concept of lev betin matneh alehem. Rabbi Shimon does not hold of this, meaning this concept that betting could come and make a condition and then uproot the kiddusha of it, he doesn't hold of it. The Amar Ravidi Baravin, Amar Rav Amar Yochanan, Temidin Shelo Tzechul Tzibur, when you have a korban tamid, which was not required by the tzibur, according to Rabbi Shimon, en nivdim tmimim, right? Divrei Chachamim nivdim tmimim. According to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, they can never be redeemed when it's tamim. Remember, when it's tamim, it's a regular korban. I can't redeem it. Why? You don't have this concept of lev betin matnim. According to Chachamim, yes. So you see from here that according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, that he argues on Chachamim, you can't just come and start redeeming something. So says the Gemara, okay, who's Chachamim? You just saw me machloket Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim. Who's Chachamim? So he says, "V'Rabbanan de Paligalet Rabbi Shimon maninu." Who is that? So he says, "Ineima Rabbanan de Ketoret." If you're going to tell me now that it's Rabbanan, the Chachamim, to do with the Ketoret, right? That's what they understood. He says, "Shane Ketoret elav bar reyahi." He says the Ketoret, you can't do anything with it. An animal that I want to redeem, what can I do with it?